Hey, everybody, welcome. Glad you're here tonight. We're going to have yet another great late night conversation. Buckle up. Here we go.
Spoken of the American century. I say that the century on which we are entering can be and must be the century of the common man.
A radical redistribution of economic power.
I mean, we know that racism is just a byproduct of capitalism. Everything would be all right if everything was put back in the hands of the people.
We need a government that will make sure Americans are taken care of and organize the economy to serve the people, not the profits of a wealthy few.
We now have the techniques and the resources to get rid of poverty.
We got to start getting out there with the people.
Get out of the movement and get to the masses.
We need a government of action.
Welcome, everybody. I am so glad to be here with all of you tonight. We're going to have yet another one of our late night conversations. Tonight, we're going to talk about a number of different things, but we'll be using our usual format, which is first I give my opening remarks, whatever it is I'm going to talk about. And then from there, I do the roll call, where I call you all out as I see you, names and locations. And then from there, I answer questions that you send in for the remainder of the show. And I'll talk about whatever you want me to talk about. I'll react to anything that you all send in. So please send questions. You can send them on Rumble Rant. You can send them to Caleb Maupin 22. But the best way you can send them is go to Buy Me a Coffee. Buy Me a Coffee, Caleb Maupin. You just send them in. Boom. I get the questions. I answer the questions. Buy Me a Coffee is a great way to participate in our show. As far as announcements, join the Center for Political Innovation. It looks like we may be calling another National Day of Action soon. Details about that are in discussion right now, but hopefully we'll soon have an announcement about that. But join the Center for Political Innovation. We're a great organization. We are in the game. We are in the fight. We are trying to build a new America where working families come first. We got a lot of activities planned and a lot of great stuff going on. So become a member. On that note, as I said before, the Center for Political Innovation is great, and we're going to be doing our stream tonight. First, I'll give my opening remarks. My opening remarks are then followed by a roll call where I call you all out as I see you, names and locations. And then from there, I answer your questions for the remainder of the show. So if you have something you want me to talk about in the second half of the show, send a Rumble Rant or send cash at me at Caleb Maupin 22. And the best way that you can do it is you can buy me a coffee. Buy me a coffee. That's a great way to do it. So on that note, folks, I am going to jump right into tonight's opening remarks. I don't know if y'all remember, but we are in the middle of a big fight that is taking place behind closed doors in the Trump administration. There are some very exciting and some very dangerous developments in the works. As far as dangerous developments, the USA is threatening Venezuela, and that will be a disaster. If the USA attacks Venezuela, a lot of American soldiers will come home in body bags, and there'll be more chaos and instability and more refugees on the border, and it'll be a bad situation all around. And this is Marco Rubio, who is, in cahoots with a whole network of anti-communist refugees, people who fled from Cuba and from Venezuela and from Nicaragua and other countries that are trying to push U.S. foreign policy to fulfill their particular vendetta. They don't like the government of Venezuela. They don't like the government of Cuba. And so they're trying to maneuver the USA to fight their battles for them. We don't want them to do that. We don't want them to engage in that. That's very, very dangerous. However, something very, very good seems to be in the works. Trump says he will soon be speaking directly with Putin once again, which is very, very, very exciting, very, very hopeful. And as we know, Tulsi Gabbard revealed that Russiagate was a hoax, that Russiagate was a lie. There was no Russian conspiracy to get Trump reelected, to get Trump elected in the first place. Russia did not meddle in the 2016 elections. And on the basis of those revelations, Trump has been able to meet with Putin in Alaska And there are now investigations going on into the people who put that out. And John Bolton's home has been raided. This is all very, very, very exciting. There are some people in the Trump administration that don't want Trump to make peace with Russia and want Trump to attack Venezuela and want Trump to attack Iran again and don't want Trump to, pivot the United States toward the rising new BRICS economy. And there are some people in the Trump administration that very much want to pivot the United States in an anti-war direction and want to attach us to the exciting new developments. There's a lot of confusion. The Trump camp doesn't exactly know what they're going to do. Meanwhile, there was just a great parade in Beijing where we saw the Russian president, the Chinese president, the North Korean leader, and the leader of Belarus all walking together. And, the anti-imperialist camp is solid. And of course, the U.S. media is using that to attack Trump as if, why wouldn't there be a big parade for the 80th anniversary of the defeat of Japan in World War II? But somehow this is proof that Trump is bad because the anti-imperialist countries are working together. Trump should have been there to join the parade. He was not there, unfortunately. But the idea that this anti-imperialist bloc existing is somehow an argument against Trump is particularly absurd. That has put Trump on the defensive. So we're in a weird situation. I hope that Trump is serious when he says he's going to meet with Putin again and that this war in Ukraine is going to come to an end. I really, really hope that is the case. And in light of that, I wanted to show the speech that Director of National Intelligence Tulsi Gabbard gave today. She spoke to the National Conservatism conference that took place. Now, what is the National Conservatism Conference? This is an event that was put together by conservatives that are emphasizing nationalism in terms of economic tariffs, in terms of America first and not meddling around the world. There's a layer of conservatives that are emphasizing kind of the nationalistic edge of Trumpism. And a whole bunch of conservatives spoke at this event. I am not a typical conservative. I guess, I did think Trump was the lesser of two evils in the last election. He's done a lot to make me somewhat regret that with, bombing Iran and going after the Palestine protesters and the ICE raids and all of that. But, meeting with Putin and the Russiagate revelations and, Trump, it's a mixed bag. But, I was hoping Trump would be a lot better than he is. And I'm certainly not a conservative in most any sense of the word. I've never really considered myself a conservative, but the idea that we would end these wars, the idea that we would have a government focused on the economy here and improving people's lives, that very much appeals to me. And Tulsi Gabbard is the most important government official in our lifetime. She is somebody who has a record of being anti-war. She is someone who has consistently opposed the lies that get us into war. She raised alarms about biolabs in Ukraine that were being built to target Russians. She advocated peace talks with North Korea. She's warned about the danger of nuclear war. And she gave this speech today at the National Conservatism Conference. And so I thought we would watch that speech and just kind of go through it, because we have to understand there's a fight happening behind closed doors within the White House. And she's part of that. And she represents the forces of good that want to stop World War III, that want to improve our relationship with the anti-imperialist countries and the BRICS. And so she's invited to this big conservative gathering. She spoke for 14 minutes, not a big, long speech, just a brief speech that she gave. We're going to go through her speech bit by bit and just try to digest what she said. Not necessarily everything she says here is necessarily good, or it's certainly not what we would say as the Center for Political Innovation. But she's the director of national intelligence. She's in a fight now with the CIA. She has stripped of security clearances all kinds of CIA operatives that were involved in the Russiagate hoax and saying that Trump works for Putin and all kinds of stuff like that. So let's just go through Tulsi Gabbard's speech to the National Conservatism Conference and see if we can kind of decode and learn anything from the speech.
I'm so glad to be able to come and to be able to greet you in person and just talk a little bit about the grave challenges that we face, yes, in the work that we're doing on a daily basis. It's very appropriate that I'm following Mike Benz in this. because he's focused on a lot of the same things that we are focused on investigating and uncovering. But really the challenges that he is talking about are challenges that every one of us as Americans are facing. And the task is not just for a Mike Benz or for a certain agency to take on. This is a moment of opportunity in our country where we have to be very clear-eyed about the direct threats and challenges to our fundamental rights and liberties and freedoms and what we, the people, are going to do about it.
Now that's big, right? So right there, out of the bat, she's telling everybody, look, there's a fight going on, right? There are big threats to our freedom, big threats to our liberties, and she views her position as the director of national intelligence. She views it as a place through which this fight can be waged. She's not just doing routine intelligence work. She's not just, no, she is in a fight to preserve our freedom. And she is using her position to carry out this fight. Now, that's really, really important right there. So right there, she's telling you she views herself as on a mission, and she is contending with powerful forces. There's a verse in the Bible that talks about we wrestle not against principalities, but against dark forces in high places, right? And I talk about divisions in the ruling class and Bonapartism. Right there, she's telling you there is a fight within the Trump administration. There is a fight within the halls of power. As the director of national intelligence, she is in that fight.
When we look at how it came to be for me and for others who I serve alongside to be here and to be a part of this change, we go back to the 2024 election and look at how President Trump was reelected and sent back to the White House by a truly unique cross-partisan coalition of Americans who looked beyond labels and really were attracted to his message of putting the American people first.
That's so true. If Trump had just ran as a Republican, a normal Republican, he would have lost. Trump won because he had RFK. He won because he had Tulsi Gabbard. He won because he had Dr. Phil. He won because he had, all kinds of great people there, Hollywood Hogan. And it was a coalition of all of us Americans that have been left out. I remember at Madison Square Garden, Dr. Phil got up there and talked about bullying and how there's been such a big effort to bully and cancel and smear anyone who supports Donald Trump. And Dr. Phil was on there talking about cancel culture and how awful it was. And Tulsi Gabbard is up there talking about wars and how we don't need more wars. And RFK, Kennedy, a lifelong Democrat, is talking about the vaccine cover-up and how we all got scammed by the vaccine makers and people who want war with Russia. And yeah, there were a lot of normal Republicans like Rudy Giuliani and others, but Trump won because he built a kind of left out coalition. All the people that have been left out of the American establishment, basically, all the people that are saying we don't like the way the country's going, and the club, the elite that are taking us in that direction, whether it's the Hollywood club, whether it's the ultra rich, whether it's the big monopolies, whoever it is, we're not liking what the club is doing. That's very, very powerful. So yeah, let's be clear about that the reason that Trump won was because he ran an anti-establishment coalition.
It was a resounding statement in his win of that election by a significant and historic margin. And it was a clear rejection of the status quo of the Washington elite, of political leaders who put their own self-interest ahead of the interests of the American people. And it was a demand for a government of, by, and for the people.
Yeah, and people forget that, okay? Forget about how much Trump has disappointed us since he's taken office. Bombing Iran, attacking the Palestine students, the ICE raids. Trump has done plenty of things that we can be critical of. It would be so much worse if Trump had not won. If Kamala had won, that would have been an electoral mandate for war with Russia. If Kamala had won, that would have been an electoral mandate for cancel culture and erasing and destroying people's lives because they disagree with what the government has done. If Kamala had won, it would have been a mandate supporting all the insane political correctness. It would have been a mandate supporting all the awful things Joe Biden did, raiding the home of the Uhuru Three, raiding Scott Ritter's home. It would have been saying that the way things were under Biden was going to continue. It's so good that Kamala Harris did not win, right? As much as Trump may have disappointed us, at least people voted for Trump on the platform of he was going to end the wars. He was going to put America first. He was going to protect our free speech and our freedoms, and the American people voted for that. Now, they may not have gotten it, but that's what they voted for. And if the American people had registered their vote of support for the nightmare of the Biden administration, that would have been a disaster. And instead, they registered their vote of support for ending the war in Ukraine, for ending the wars around the world, protecting our freedom, ending the insane political correctness and smearing and targeting. Let's be clear about that.
So here we are, about 7-8 months into this administration. President Trump has wasted no time in challenging this system, this broken system in Washington, and striking at its very root, delivering results for the American people to make our nation more safe, secure, prosperous, and free. I have the privilege of serving as America's 8th Director of National Intelligence, and President Trump has entrusted in me the mission and responsibility of overseeing the intelligence community, this sprawling network of agencies and entities that are charged with the task of providing timely and objective intelligence to the president and policymakers, free from politicization.
Now, what she just said is very important, right? The job of the intelligence agencies is to gather information, and they're not supposed to set policy. It's the president who decides what our relationship with different countries is going to be. It's the president and the executive branch that decide, what we're going to do as a country. The intelligence agencies are supposed to carry out policy. They're not supposed to create policy. But that's not been the case. The CIA has been crafting our culture, right? The Congress for Cultural Freedom, where they were funding Partisan Review magazine and funding the art of Jackson Pollock and pushing certain ideas. The CIA has completely meddled in American politics and pushed certain policies and certain agendas that they think would be good for us. And they're not supposed to do that. They're just supposed to gather information and let the elected officials determine what the government does and what our relationships are. But they don't do that, right? The intelligence agencies are acting as, I think Bill Moyers from PBS, he did a piece, he called it the shadow government, right? That they, the secret government, the shadow government, the intelligence agencies basically decide what they want, and elected officials just kind of rubber stamp it or go along with it, or in some cases don't even know about it. So here we go.
Unfortunately, in my short 10 years here so far, we have already seen too many examples of politicization and weaponization of intelligence throughout our country's history. We look at where we are now. Over the last several weeks, we've declassified and released documents that exposed how President Obama and leaders in the intelligence community knowingly manufactured a false intelligence document after the 2016 election was done, after the American people said, no, we want Donald Trump to go and be our commander-in-chief, not Hillary Clinton. And this manufactured document alleged that Russia aspired to help President Trump win the election with the aim of undermining his presidency and usurping the will and the voices of the American people.
Yeah, she has revealed, it is now a public record, that they made up the idea that Russia meddled in the election. And I got to say, I get the emails of Media Matters for America, and I get the emails of a lot of different entities, liberal entities, and they're saying, oh, it's a no, this is a flop, there's nothing here. What do you mean there's nothing here? This is huge. This is absolutely huge. All of the Trump, Russia stuff was made up. It was fake news. And the intelligence agencies did multiple assessments, said Russia was not trying to interfere in our elections. And then after the election was over, Obama said, I want a different answer. They came up with a different answer. And because of that different answer, Trump wasn't able to improve relations with Russia. He was under investigation in his first term. Because of that different information, the FBI was able to suppress the Hunter Biden laptop story and enable a key news story, an October surprise that would have enabled Trump to get reelected, enabled the media to suppress that, saying it was Russian propaganda when they knew it wasn't. And because of that, Biden won the 2020 election. And yeah, I mean, this lie kept going, and it ultimately led to a war. And the war in Ukraine would never have happened if the intelligence agencies had not lied about Russiagate. If the Trump-Russia conspiracy theory that was bandied about the media, if that had not been told by our intelligence agencies, cooked up for political reasons, hundreds of thousands of people that have died in the Russian, Russia-Ukraine special military operation war conflict would still be alive. Can you believe this? A war happened because they lied. That's big. And Tulsi has revealed that.
Trump to the White House. When you look at some of the very same leaders who led this manufactured intelligence document, like James Clapper, also had a very direct hand in manufacturing intelligence on the weapons of mass destruction, the alleged weapons of mass destruction in Iraq to support George W. Bush's regime change war in Iraq. For me to be here as the 8th Director of National Intelligence and uncover how James Clapper and others like John Brennan manufactured intelligence to try to undermine President Trump's administration and presidency and the voices of the American people, and then go back to the founding of the Office of the Director of National Intelligence that came about as a result of the terrorist attack on 9/11 and the manufacturing of intelligence to support the regime change war in Iraq that George Bush led, is an interesting bookend where we find ourselves still dealing with these same issues of politicization and weaponization of intelligence. James Clapper at that time was the director of the agency that is now called the National Geospatial Intelligence Agency, or NGA. And he wrote in his book about how Vice President Dick Cheney was pushing for intelligence to support the invasion of Iraq, to support the narrative of Iraq's alleged WMDs, and to support the narrative of Iraq's alleged ties to al-Qaeda, neither of which actually existed.
Yeah. So this is really important. This is extremely important, right? Tulsi's not just saying that the intelligence agencies, came up with this Russiagate lie to hurt Trump. She's saying that the very same people, including James Clapper, cooked the books to say that Iraq had weapons of mass destruction and that Iraq was involved in 9/11. So she's going after Obama for how he used the intelligence agencies. She's going after Bush and Dick Cheney for how they used the intelligence agencies. And she's pointing out that it's the same people. It's the exact same people. It's not like a different administration. It's not the Democrats here. No, it's the same people. There's a continuity when they talk about the deep state, right? It's the same group of people that lied about weapons of mass destruction in Iraq. They're the same people that lied about Russiagate, and they're neoconservatives. They're neocons, right? They're former Trotskyites who believe the USA is on a mission to spread democracy and spread the free market all over the world and overthrow governments, right? It's the neocons, and it's the people trained in Sovietology. It's the neocons, and it's the same people. And she's pointing out that they were Republicans during the Bush years, and they were Democrats during the Obama years, and they are lying, and they are manipulating the government, and the intelligence agencies are supposed to give briefings to the president to tell him the truth, not to feed an agenda.
So in response to this, James Clapper ordered his agency to create images that Colin Powell then went on to use to support their alleged WMD narrative. And in James Clapper's words, we were, quote, so eager to help that we found what wasn't really there.
Wow. So hear this. This is the same guy, right? James Clapper, who rigged intelligence to say that, Trump had gotten support from Russia. And he said that when Dick Cheney told them to say that Iraq is making weapons of mass destruction, he said they were so eager to find it, they found what wasn't there. They lied.
Quote. We've seen other examples, those that we know of. There are many others that I believe we don't yet know of, how leaders in the intelligence community and the FBI knowingly use false information to gain FISA warrants to illegally spy on American citizens.
Yeah. In order to violate your privacy and spy on you, they have to get a warrant. So the FBI lies and says things that are not true in order to get those warrants to spy on you. Right. And we saw that at the Uhuru trial. They admitted on the stand that all kinds of things that were included in the indictment that brought the criminal charges against Chairman O'Malley, against Jesse Neville and Penny Hess, all kinds of things that were in the indictment, the FBI admitted they had no evidence of. They just made them up in order to get the indictment to bring the charges against them. The intelligence agencies, including the FBI and the CIA, they lie in order to violate our freedoms, in order to spy on us, etc. This is a big problem. And Tulsi Gabbard began her speech by saying, I am the director of national intelligence because I'm in the fight to protect our freedoms from these people, from these liars, from these neocons, right? So we have somebody in the highest position of American intelligence who is to some degree or other, even though I don't agree with her about Israel, and there's plenty that I'm sure if her and I sat down and had coffee, we could argue about, but she at least understands that we are under threat from the war makers and the repressive agencies, the FBI and others, violating our freedom, and that she views her job as trying to make things better and trying to hold them back. This is important. This is really, 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 really important, folks.
These are just a few of, unfortunately, what is a long list of known examples of politicization and weaponization that all point to the truth that many of us here in this room know, which is that the rot runs deep. And it's not just in the intelligence community. I've seen examples of this across almost every federal agency. And so it requires us all to confront the uncomfortable truth that we have these conspirators, these traitors to the Constitution, who are working within our government, who dangerously believe that they are not only above the law, but that they are above the Constitution and the Bill of Rights. People who believe that they have the right to undermine the duly elected president of the United States because they disagree with his positions or his policies, and that they know better.
Yeah, right? The secret government, the shadow government, the forces that believe they have the right to overrule the American people. They have the right to tell noble lies. The intelligence apparatus is full of people who think they have the right to rule over us. And that's a problem.
We go back to the first Trump administration and a prominent example of then former Lieutenant Colonel Vindman. And I remember being in Congress as a Democrat at the time, seeing his testimony and the testimony of others basically saying, well, we have to protect the country from Donald Trump, the person the American people elected to be the president of the United States. Whether we agree or disagree on policy is not the point. If you disagree on policy, go run for president and market your policies to the American people. It undermines our Constitution, our democratic republic, when we have people within our government who are not the president of the United States, who are not elected by the American people, taking it upon themselves to undermine ultimately the American people and the Constitution.
Yes, our republic, our elected government, our Constitution is under threat from the globalists, from the big monopolies and the people they've cultivated in their think tanks, from the neocons, the former Trotskyites, the Council on Foreign Relations, the World Economic Forum. There's a layer of people that are foot soldiers of imperialism that have decided they are above the voters of America. And they think they can lie, and they think they can do what they want, and they don't have to listen to elected leaders. This is the crisis that we are in.
These people have gotten away with these kinds of activities for so long because they're protected by an entire system that is built to shield their nefarious activities. And they do this with the assistance and the protection of the deep state and the propaganda media. And those of us who have been targeted by this deep state are very familiar with the tactics. Keep this in mind. This happens frequently in real time as we gather here today, where someone in the intelligence community leaks classified intelligence to their friends in the propaganda media. Those individuals in the propaganda media eagerly print this classified intelligence from unnamed sources. Then we see other people in the media talk about this classified intelligence. No one's verified it. No one's done any kind of vetting. No one has done any basic journalistic work. And then we see politicians repeating and talking about this thing that was leaked to the media.
Yeah. And they're perverts too, right? They're obsessed with sex, right? A great example of what she just said, where they take something that's not true, that's classified, and they blast it everywhere without ever fact checking it in order to hurt someone's reputation, is the PP tape. Do you remember that? Right after Donald Trump got elected, they say, oh, we've got evidence that Russia has a tape of Donald Trump getting peed on by a prostitute. And it's true, right? Oh, Donald Trump got peed on by a prostitute in Russia, and that's how he's controlled. And now it's revealed they knew the whole time that it was bullshit. The Steele dossier wasn't real, and it was a nasty sexual rumor about Donald Trump that had absolutely no credibility, but they blasted it all over the media, and all kinds of mainstream media outlets reported it as if it was true. And they said, they treated it like it was just a fact, and they're like this, right? And they destroy people's reputations, and they have built an apparatus designed to target anyone who would try to defend our elected government and our right to not go into wars and not have our tax money poured into wars and not launch World War III. And they target people viciously, and it's always some weird sexual thing. Right? I think the deep state is unhealthily obsessed with sex. We know that during Project MK Ultra, one of the things they did is they had prostitutes, lure guys to hotels or whatever, and then get them high on hallucinogens to see what would happen. And, they're obsessed with the LGBT thing. And it's like they're constantly trying to find weird sexual stuff that they can talk about, right? And they blast it in the media. They destroy people's reputations. Me Too was very much an intelligence operation. Is it obviously true that sexual harassment goes on? Sure. But you'll notice some people got their lives destroyed with Me Too and some didn't, right? And it was very carefully arranged. Meanwhile, we still don't have the facts about Jeffrey Epstein and what went on with that. And the P. Diddy case went on for years, and then P. Diddy even got acquitted at his trial. What's going on here, right? And that they manipulate, and they're obsessed with sex and rumors, and they use the mainstream media that blasts allegations and lies and exaggerations about certain people. And this is what we're up against. This is the deep state, the shadow government of perverts that are trying to smear and lie to keep us in wars.
And we've seen how this tried and true playbook that is used over and over again to either smear their opponents, to, in President Trump's case, to be used as a basis for FBI raids on his home, lawfare, impeachments, endless investigations, and so forth. So I get asked oftentimes by people who don't come to events like this, who are just working hard and trying to raise a family and trying to get by, and they say, what is the deep state? People talk about the deep state. What is it? This is what we're talking about. It's not some grand conspiracy theory. It is a conspiracy to undermine the Constitution, but this is the reality that we are operating in. And it's important for us to talk about it, to be very clear-eyed about it, so that we can combat it with the truth.
Yeah. It's an apparatus that's been created to defend what is indefensible, right? I mean, U.S. foreign policy is indefensible. The U.S. invasion of Iraq was based on lies, didn't make Iraq better. The USA occupied Afghanistan for 20 years, and it didn't make life better for the Afghans at all. It was instability and chaos and drug gangs and the opium fields, the poppy fields. The USA overthrew Libya, the most prosperous government on the African continent, and things haven't gotten better. It's indefensible. Supporting U.S. foreign policy is indefensible. Everyone can see that. right? There is not a single place in recent times, maybe since World War II, that you could say the U.S. military and the U.S. CIA went in there and they overthrew a government and they destabilized a country and they toppled a government, toppled the regime, and life got better. It's indefensible. And, you know, in order to believe that it's defensible, you just have to be an idiot. And that's what mainstream media is full of. It's full of idiots. People like Anderson Cooper, right? People like Rachel Maddow. It's full of idiots, right? And if you're not an idiot and you just have enough common sense to say, you know, the emperor really has no clothes, and these wars don't make things better, and these governments that we overthrow, and they're not all pure evil, and Gaddafi raised all kinds of people out of poverty and all of that. Well, what do? They come up with a bunch of sexual bullshit about you. They smear you. They make up the PP tape. They send the FBI to raid your home and all of that. And that it can't be subjected to real scrutiny, right? And that's why they're furious that RT. Oh my God, we can't have RT. We can't have a TV network from another country giving another perspective. Oh my God, we can't have alternative media. We can't. No. You know, because it's indefensible. They can't stand up to the facts. And so all they can do is smear and attack. And it's this shadow government. It's not what the American people voted for. And this is the deep state, this layer that is propping up a satanic foreign policy that is leading to wars all over the world while America gets poorer and poorer and poorer, right? That is the deep state. Right. And that imperialism, the global economic system that is propped up by all these wars, that is impoverishing us, it has built up an apparatus of intelligence and think tanks and people that think they're on a mission, you know, and they defend the indefensible, and they respond with smearing and deception and leaks and FBI raids and all kinds of stuff to prop up their satanic order.
This is why exposing the truth is so important, to bring about that real transparency and that accountability. Ensuring that our Constitution and Bill of Rights, and this is something that I'm focused on in the Office of the Director of National Intelligence and pushing throughout the intelligence community, is actually focusing on the Constitution, making it an event. When new people are brought into any of these organizations, every one of them has to swear an oath. As many here did if you served in the military, if you've served in different positions in government, to support and defend the Constitution, to talk about it, have a discussion. What does this actually mean, and how do we apply it in the work that is done every single day? Because it must be our North Star every day. It must be that guiding principle that serves as our foundation and the left and right limits on the decisions that are being made within our work. Those who serve in government in any position at the very top, or those who may be coming in brand new, our sole focus must be on serving the American people and upholding the Constitution and Bill of Rights.
Yeah, right now we've got to defend our Constitution from the shadow government. Our government is overrun by neocon warhawks and elitists that are determined to prop up globalism, imperialism, this satanic international order that requires endless human sacrifices in terms of blood and destroyed nations and deaths. We are run by a satanic international order that is propped up by these forces. The American people oppose it, and so they're essentially trying to get rid of our Constitution and trying to get rid of the ability of the American people to oppose them. It's a really big problem.
It's very, I feel, appropriate that I'm coming and speaking to you after Mike Benz and hearing at least some of the things he talked about at the end about the various attacks on our fundamental rights, freedoms, and liberties that are occurring not only here in the United States, but how these threats are coming from policies and agreements that are being talked about in multinational organizations and settings. Our founding documents were based on our inalienable rights and freedoms that are granted to us by God and no one else. And it's up to us to continue to speak that truth and stand up against those who seek to take them away, no matter where they are or who they are. We have a lot of work to do. We are working hard every day towards this end. When you look at how deeply entrenched the deep state is, those who believe they are more powerful than the Constitution, you can understand the work that we have ahead of us. But I'm grateful to serve in this position, grateful to President Trump for entrusting me with this mission to truly seek the truth, find the truth, and tell the truth to the American people so that true accountability and true change, lasting change, can come about. You shall know the truth, and the truth shall set you free. This change will only be possible if every one of us as Americans stands together and fights for it. The future of our country as a free nation is truly in our hands, and we cannot be complacent. We cannot fall asleep at the wheel and allow anyone to sneak in the back door and take it from us, literally and figuratively. So this movement for positive change, institutional and historic change, is about more than one person or one organization. It's about all of us, and it's about restoring the promise of America and the vision that our founders had for our country. And as we go back and look at their courage and their strength and the threats that were laid on them as they worked to write these founding documents, I hope that that gives us inspiration and courage and strength to fight the battles that we have before us, because we are the ones that they were referring to when they talked about a government of, by, and for the people. We're the only ones who can make it happen. Thank you for standing for freedom and liberty and truth. Aloha.
That is the most important government official that has existed in my lifetime. She is waging a war behind closed doors within the Trump administration, outside of the administration, against the very dark, sinister forces that have pushed us into so many wars and want to rule over us. We need to do everything we can to support Tulsi Gabbard right now, okay? And, I know that she doesn't agree with a lot of us on a lot of issues, but what you just heard there is a fight going on, okay? This is like Lincoln versus the slaveholders. Plenty to criticize about Lincoln, but it's on that level. Lincoln was against the slaveholders. She's against the war makers, right? And she's waging a fight in which our ability to have a government that doesn't lie us into wars is possibly in question. So we must do everything that we can to support Tulsi Gabbard right now. And we at CPI, we have been doing everything we can to support Tulsi Gabbard. Watch.
Russia, peace with Russia. Build the peace bridge. Build the peace bridge. And Ukraine war. And Ukraine war.
We are promoting peace, no war with Ukraine. And you can see the skyline of downtown LA and the famous Echo Park fountain there.
Out here in Boston today, we're here because last night the world breathed a sigh of relief. Our leaders have been hurtling towards the edge of the nuclear cliff, moving the world closer and closer to nuclear war. And although Trump has done many things that are absolutely horrible, last night he did something that was great.
Out here to support the peace summit between President Trump and President Putin, and to thank Tulsi Gabbard for making it possible.
That we are in extreme historic times right now. President Trump is currently in the great state of Alaska, attempting to make peace between the United States and Russia.
If what's happening today in Alaska will get us closer to peace, that's what we want. That's what we want.
Yesterday's meeting between Donald Trump and Vladimir Putin was a major step in the right direction. We need more dialogue, more engagement to
come to the end of this war.
Hey, we're here in Portland, Oregon. CPI is on the streets of Portland, Oregon. We want to say that we support the peace deal being made between Trump and Putin in Alaska.
Hi guys, we're here at Liberty Station in San Diego. Liberty Station used to be a base that was purpose for training Marines and U.S. sailors during World War II. I thought it'd be pretty symbolic to come here, seeing as how, you know, the U.S. and Russia, they worked together in order to defeat Nazi Germany during World War II. I think this is also a beautiful spot to do this kind of activity in general.
Peace with Russia! Peace with Russia! Build the peace bridge! Build the peace bridge! Build the peace bridge! End the war! End the war!
Something amazing happened yesterday. I don't care how you feel about Trump, but this act of peace, and the fact that our president had the patience to go over there in Alaska. Putin came to our country just yesterday and they made a lot of progress. And so we were out here because we want to put more support for this kind of effort. I have 3 children, and I want my children to grow up in a world of peace.
By declassifying the proof that Russiagate was a lie, there wasn't a plot against Trump, there was a plot against peace. It was a plot by James Clapper and John Brennan and Hillary Clinton to prevent an alliance between Russia and the United States. And now Tulsi Gabbard has blown the Russiagate lie wide open and given the President of the United States the freedom to make peace again. This is part of a worldwide day of action called by Caleb Loppin and the Center for Political Innovation. Rallies like this are happening all over the United States and even on other continents.
We support peace talks and Ukraine war. 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 Now you'll notice that we have signs here for Tulsi Gabbard. Tulsi Gabbard is the Director of National Intelligence, and she is the one who is really responsible for the fact that there are peace negotiations taking place. She revealed that Russiagate was a complete hoax and that there was no Russian interference in the 2016 elections. And with her revelations, she made it possible for President Trump and President Putin to sit down. We really appreciate what Tulsi Gabbard has done. Thank you, Tulsi. Thank you, Tulsi Gabbard. Thank you, Tulsi. Thank you, Tulsi.
Thank you, Tulsi.
Thank you, Tulsi. Thank you, Tulsi.
Russiagate was a big attack on peace, a big attack on the American people. And now that that's out of the way, thanks to Tulsi Gabbard, thanks to the journalism of Aaron Monte and others, Trump, you have the green light to make peace in Alaska with Russia. So let's get the job done because we have a lot of work to do. We have a new nuclear treaty to negotiate. The START treaty is running out.
And the opening that was created for that was made by somebody by the name of Tulsi Gabbard. We'd like to thank Tulsi Gabbard for allowing that to happen because she revealed that Russiagate was an absolute hoax. And it was a complete lie. The fact of the matter is Russia did not interfere with our elections. In fact, they withheld plenty of information that they had on the Clinton administration, on the Clintons, etc., because they thought that she would actually win the election. It was a complete hoax.
The work she's been doing and continues to do, exposing Obama, Clinton, and others, has made repairing relations with Russia possible. She has shown Russiagate to be a hoax. She has shown they knew what they were doing. Obama rejected intelligence reports saying Russia was not interfering in our elections. Tulsi G has set us free to stop the march towards World War III. Tulsi G has set us free to stop the march towards World War III. Thank you, Tulsi. You have freed President Trump and given him the courage and the ability to finally have the meeting with President Putin that he should have had 8 years ago.
Have a moment of reflection.
So, Yeah, we are out there in the streets supporting Tulsi Gabbard, and we've got to be in this fight. We can't just sit back and say, all right, whatever happens. No, we have to have Tulsi's back right now. We need to build a movement. There needs to be a movement of people in the streets supporting Tulsi Gabbard and opposing the march toward World War III. We've got to do it. We've got to do it. And we are doing it as CPI. It looks like we're going to be in the streets again in October doing it. We have got to build a movement, and we've got to have her back, because this is the only chance we've got to stop World War III. Tulsi Gabbard is the most important elected official. I mean, the most important government official that we've had in my entire lifetime. She is doing a great job, and she needs our support. And if you oppose war and the stripping away of our freedom, if you oppose the dangers to our Bill of Rights and our freedom and our elected government, if you oppose this shadow government that rules over us, then you need to stand with Tulsi Gabbard. So join the Center for Political Innovation, and we've got plenty of work to do. I'll be taking questions in the second half of the show. Rumble rants. We've already got one Rumble rant that's come in. Greatly appreciated. We'll be answering it. We've also got, there's Caleb Moppin 22 on Cash App. Best way to send a question is buy me a coffee. It's the best way to send a question. And we have been reading from my book, The New Communist Movement, Party Building in 1970s America. Goes over the history of the communist groups in the 1970s. And the attempts to build a new communist party that were not successful in the 1970s. So while I'm going to read, another section of that book tonight, I'll be waiting for you all to send in your questions for the second half of the show. And I'm going to read from it. Then we'll do our roll call. Then I'll answer your questions, and then we'll be done. So yeah, here we go. Send questions. Please send questions. I really need you all to send me some questions. Get me talking in the second half of our show. Send questions. Those are the three ways: Rumble rants, Cash App, or buy me a coffee. Send questions for the second half of the program. All right, I'm going to read. The various sects that made up the new communist movement all more or less adopted the same strategy. They got jobs in factories and sought to win their co-workers to communism. They adopted their own interpretations of how to carry out the methods spelled out in the J. Peters Manual on Organization, published by the Communist Party in the 1930s. They formed shop nuclei. They published specific newsletters for their workplaces. They tried to divide their co-workers into the advanced, the center, and the right, and strategized how to recruit the advanced, neutralize the center, and defeat the right. The only city where the new communist movement seems to have been highly successful in gaining influence among industrial workers was Detroit. Motor City in Michigan was overwhelmingly African American and a center of automobile manufacturing. A communist magazine called Inner City Voice was published throughout the city after the 1968 riots. The FBI worked to stop the magazine from being published. The book Detroit, I Do Mind Dying, written by Dan Drzakis and Marvin Sukin, describes the FBI made a practice of visiting shops which produced the paper and inquiring why the owners were supporting subversion. The usual result was an immediate refusal to print any more issues. As a result of the FBI and the union harassment, the Inner City Voice never printed in the same shop twice. The consequence of the double attack was that copy had to be taken to Chicago. The papers were then trucked back to Detroit for distribution. Kenneth Cockrell, an African-American attorney who identified as a communist, became a hero to the black community for two major courtroom acquittals he secured. The first victory was for a group of black nationalists from the Republic of New Africa organization who had assassinated some local heroin dealers and then gotten into a shootout with the police who had been protecting them. The second was for Jimmy Johnson, a black auto worker who murdered his white co-workers after he was wrongfully terminated. The publishers of Inner City Voice, including Ken Cockrell and General Baker, formed the League of Revolutionary Black Workers as a group of black communist activists operating in the city. The Motor City Labor League was established for their white allies. Ken Cockrell and his allies at Wayne State University eventually seized control of South End, the campus newspaper, and transformed it into a communist publication with the slogan, "One class-conscious worker is worth 100 students," printed on the masthead. The South End was distributed by Mike Hamlin and Luke Tripp, two members of the League of Revolutionary Black Workers, and they battled the university in court to maintain control of the publication and funds and use it to promote communism throughout the city. Soon, black auto workers were organized into a faction called the Dodge Revolutionary Union Movement, DRUM, which accused the UAW leadership of being racist and pro-imperialist and aimed to transform the Auto Workers Union into a communist one, aligned with China and the Black Panthers. DRUM members protested outside the headquarters of the UAW, chanting, "We finally got the news about how our dues are being used. We finally got the news about how our dues are being used." The summer of 1973 was known as Wildcat Summer in Detroit auto plants, as major industrial actions led by communists dominated local headlines. On July 24th, two black auto workers who had previously been members of the Black Panthers seized control of the electrical power cage at their factory. 214 of the 300 workers at the plant had demanded that a supervisor, known for his racist comments and actions, be fired. When the company refused to listen to them, Larry Carter and Isaac Shorter went into the electrical cage and turned off the power in the factory, shutting down the assembly line. Hundreds of workers from nearby factories joined them as they barricaded themselves into the electrical cage, refusing to come out unless the racist boss was fired and they were granted immunity for their actions. After 13 hours, the company gave in. Workers carried Carter and Shorter out of the factory on their shoulders, cheering. This is an image of them being carried out victorious on the shoulders of their co-workers. The black workers in the city could control it. Isaac Shorter told the press, "The black workers in this city could control it. But at the same time, there's no such thing as black control, because it's not a racial thing. It's a system which is a capitalist system. It oppresses all of us, blacks, whites, Chicanos, just name it, yellow and brown. And that's the way we should look at it as being." On August 28th, another factory was shut down by a wildcat strike when 16 workers were fired for reporting health and safety violations. This strike was primarily made up of white workers, though their leader and spokesperson was Jerome Scott, an African-American worker who was part of the Communist League led by Nelson Peary. The local UAW boss, Doug Frazier, went to the factory the next day and urged the workers outside with picket signs to return to work, but they did not listen. After 6 days, the company gave in and agreed to address health and safety violations and rehire the workers who were wrongfully fired. The very next day, another factory was shut down by William Gilbreth, a leader of the Progressive Labor Party. He had been fired for handing out leaflets about bad conditions on the job. He returned to work for his normal shift after being fired and sat down on top of the assembly line, bringing production to a halt. 200 workers joined him in occupying the plant for a sit-down strike. The police stormed into the plant and arrested 15 workers and cleared out the strikers. The next day, workers at the factory who wanted to continue the strike had a pitched battle with a mob of more conservative workers mobilized by the UAW leadership to break this, quote, illegal strike. In 1972, a communist named Justin C. Ravitz, who had worked closely with Kenneth Cockrell, was elected for a 10-year term as a local judge. He quoted Mao Zedong's Red Book from the bench, and he fined food corporations for serving rotten meat to the public. And he forced rapists to study communist literature on the oppression of women before their sentencing. Ravitz removed the U.S. flag from the courtroom and engaged in other provocative activities from his elected seat on the bench, quoting Marx and Lenin in speeches to the court and using his position to promote communist politics. In 1973, Coleman Young was elected mayor of Detroit on a platform of abolishing a particularly vicious wing of the police department known for brutality. At the time he was elected, Coleman Young was very friendly with both the Communist Party USA and a number of NCM and Trotskyite groups. He stayed in office until 1994, though his politics often shifted and were not consistently radical. Abayomi Ezekwe, founder of the Pan-African Newswire, described the pivotal mayor, quote, Detroit's first African-American mayor, Coleman A. Young, who governed from 1974 to 1993, built his political reputation through grassroots involvement as a left-wing trade union organizer with the National Negro Labor Councils during the 1940s and early 50s. Young was brought in before the Legislative Committee on Un-American Activities during the 1950s. He stood up to right-wing congressional members challenging their racist remarks and refusing to answer questions related to his membership and ties with the communist left. In 1973, Young, with the support of a broad alliance of African-American political forces, along with progressive and liberal whites, became the first black mayor of Detroit. He immediately set out to rid the city of racist cops and other municipal employees, instituting an affirmative action program that was challenged by law enforcement and other reactionary political forces. However, compromises were necessary to maintain capitalist investments in Detroit. At the close of the Young administration, the city was suffering from massive job losses and an inadequate and declining public transportation system and the collapse of municipal infrastructure. General Baker, a black auto worker and founder of Drum, eventually became a member of the Communist Labor Party and ran for a Detroit seat in the U.S. House of Representatives in 1976. In an article published by his campaign, he wrote, despite lies and propaganda on television, in the schools, and in the newspaper, the people cannot be fooled about socialism any longer. They have learned that this capitalist system is the most savage, barbaric system in the history of the world. With the capacity to feed the entire world, there has never been such starvation. With the possibility for peace, there has never been such bloodshed. With the need of housing and school never greater, never has there been such unemployment. Capitalism is a system that depends that honest working people bow down and take orders from common criminals. This is what must change, and that is what this campaign is about. The goal of this campaign is to imbue the people of the United States of North America with the burning desire and will to fight for socialism, because the socialist system means real freedom. It means a job, because without a job, there is no food, shelter, and clothing, and without food, shelter, and clothing, there is no life. It means getting up in the morning and knowing that the battery is going to be in your car so you can drive to work. It means coming home at night and knowing your television is going to be there, because once people are capable of living without stealing from their neighbors, stealing will stop. It means living in a friendly town where national hatred has ended and people are no longer afraid of one another because of the color of their skin or the language that they speak. This can only come with socialism. The working class must end this capitalist system that is based and thrives upon murder, starvation, and misery of the masses of the people. There is no need of a system that can only produce want and hunger for the many and vast wealth for the few. That system must be swept away, and the working class can do it. Ezekwe noted that starting in the 1970s, auto plants and factories in Detroit began closing because the city was known for its militant atmosphere among the workers. Since the 1970s, the owners of capital have strategically relocated outside the region into the areas where the higher rate of profit could be accrued through the super exploitation of labor. If one word had to be chosen to characterize the culture of the new communist movement, it would be intense, writes Max Elbaum. The sheer amount of time, passion, and energy that made movement cadre through into political work made the movement all life-consuming. Today, it is fashionable to attribute such single-mindedness to to some combination of top-down structures, ideological brainwashing, and psychological aberration. But the willingness, indeed the eagerness, of young Marxist-Leninists to devote most of their waking hours to revolutionary activity was not the result of manipulation, orders from above, or unmet emotional needs. It was the expression of deeply held convictions. Even at the height of the late 60s radicalism, it was no casual, risk-free decision to declare oneself to be a communist. The various NCM groups took their mission very seriously. They aimed to set up a new communist organization among the working class. They often lived together and tried to have total devotion to the cause. They practiced criticism, self-criticism. utilizing this to hold each other accountable and demand people give their utmost to the cause. There was a strong understanding on the part of most NCM groups that they did not want to be part of the counterculture or the fringe elements of U.S. society. However, being a communist in America during the Cold War relegated one to the political fringe, as communism was the country's declared enemy. The NCM's stated goal was to build a base among the population, and it sought to maneuver in various ways to accomplish this task. In 1974, the city of Boston implemented a program of school busing in order to racially desegregate the city. Children were bused to random schools rather than the one closest to them, in the hopes of breaking down inequality between schools in black and white neighborhoods. The working class white Irish Americans of Boston were vehemently opposed to the program, and ugly racist riots soon erupted. Black nationalists, such as the Nation of Islam and the Black Panthers, also opposed school integration. The busing question forced many communist groups into an awkward position. Some defended busing, some highlighted the voices of black radicals who opposed it, and some embraced the racist riots. The headline of the Revolutionary Union's newspaper proclaimed, "The people must unite to smash the Boston busing plan." The text Heavy Radicals, the FBI's Secret War on America's Maoists, by Aaron J. Leonard and Conard A. Gallagher, quotes the article the RU published justifying their support for the anti-busing riots. Quote, "Those who think the way to stand with black people and other oppressed nationalities is to attack white workers as simply a bunch of racists who think the ruling class is a friend of the oppressed can at best only drag the tail of the struggle, and if they continue in this path, can only end up falling over backwards completely into the camp of the ruling class." The RU eventually apologized and became the bad example of a communist group that had embraced the right wing. The wisdom that supporting the right wing was an unforgivable crime spread. Workers' World Party prided itself on organizing a We Say No to Racism rally against the racist riots in 1974 that attracted 20,000 people. Max Elbaum writes, quote, "The RU dug in its heels, but for the first time faced not just criticism, but complete isolation. The Revolutionary Union founded the Revolutionary Communist Party in 1975. And at the time was going to great lengths to break with the counterculture and left aesthetics. Members wore jean jackets and baseball caps with the names of beer companies, a kind of caricature of what they thought working class people were like." Elbaum writes, "Outside of its own milieu, however, RCP had become a near pariah. Between the fall of 1974 and the fall of 1975, the view shifted from having criticism of the RU to seeing it as an outside of Marxism-Leninism altogether. During this time, the RCP seized control of Vietnam veterans against the war. According to Elbaum, the RU controlled the national office and moved decisively to assert full control over the organization. It expelled a number of chapters, drove out scores of individuals, and imposed pragmatic uniformity on those members who remained. Despite being increasingly isolated from the movement, the Revolutionary Communist Party was much larger than other communist NCM groups. The Weather Underground had been continuously bombing symbolic sites such as the U.S. Capitol, the Pentagon, and the offices of elected officials. The group generally called in a threat prior to the explosive detonating in order to make sure no one was killed. After a while, Weatherman bombings began receiving less and less publicity and attention. As a result, the organization began debating how to move forward and decided it was time for a dramatic public relations move. The organization published a book called Prairie Fire, The Politics of Anti-Imperialism in 1974 and distributed 40,000 copies all across the country. Stacks of this book were discreetly left on college campuses, inside of bookstores, and in various places where the Weathermen believed potential sympathizers would find them. The book was intended to explain the justification for the various bombings the organization was carrying out and raise the organization's notoriety in the face of decreased media attention. The primary author of the book was probably Clayton Van Lydegraaf, an older veteran of the Communist Party who had coordinated U.S. support for the Chinese military during the Second World War and had deep intelligence connections. Leidegraf more or less moved into the position of being the Weather Underground's ideological guru, despite being a kind of man of violence rather than a Marxist theoretician, if one looks over his life story. Leidegraf had joined the Communist Party as a teenager during the strike waves of the 1930s and joined the U.S. military during the Second World War, where he established close ties with the Chinese Red Army, arranging U.S. arms and supply shipments to help fight Japan. Leidegraf returned to the U.S. and was an active member of the Communist Party, running for office, getting kicked out of his union, and otherwise making headlines as a communist activist in the Pacific Northwest region. Then, during the height of McCarthyism and the prosecutions of communists, he disappeared. According to a biographical article on historylink.org, in 1955, Van Leidegraf's wife, Mary Ann, and her father were accused of being Communist Party members. She said in related court proceedings that she was estranged from her husband, who had vanished 4 years before in 1951, and she had no idea where he was. She filed for divorce in July of 1955. Van Leidegraf resurfaced in 1956. In February of that year, Nikita Khrushchev, the premier of Soviet Russia, gave a secret speech to Communist Party leaders in which he denounced Stalin. Van Leidegraf did not approve of Khrushchev's renunciation of Stalin, and his CPUSA career came to an end. It's unclear whether he left the party or whether he was expelled for following the Stalinist line. It then appears during his years of disappearance, Leidegraf had been in Asia, and this came up when he was called before the House Un-American Activities Committee in 1956. A committee lawyer accused him of being a trained killer and saboteur who had been part of a peasant guerrilla uprising in the Philippines right after World War II. He demanded to know if Van Leidegraf had ever killed anyone using a garrote, a thin wire used to strangle people silently, and came right out and accused him of murder. Van Leidegraf, a short, stocky man in a dark suit, gazed up at the ceiling with an amused expression and refused to answer questions, invoking the Fifth Amendment, although he did testify to having joined the Communist Party in 1933. He told reporters in the hall afterwards that the accusations were pure poppycock and that he'd never been to the Philippines. Regardless, Leidegraf floated around anti-revisionist and pro-Beijing circles throughout the 1960s. He wrote a few pamphlets, such as The Object is to Win, that were widely circulated before he eventually joined the Weather Underground in the 1970s. He supported himself as a refrigerator repairman and engaged in clandestine activities such as planting bombs and breaking drug guru Timothy Leary out of federal prison. He eventually left the illegal and clandestine wing of the Weather Underground, and he formed the Prairie Fire Organizing Committee as the public above-ground organization that aimed to generate public support for their activities after the Prairie Fire book was distributed across the country. The above-ground organization raised money for the Weathermen and helped them make connections with the Black Liberation Army and other left adventurist organizations engaged in illegal activities. From January 30th to February 1st of 1976, the Prairie Fire Organizing Committee organized the National Hard Times Conference, which served as a gathering of many NCM activists and related organizations. The October League, Marxist-Leninist, the Black Panthers, the Guardian newspaper, the Puerto Rican Socialist Party, the Workers' World Party, and the Socialist Workers' Party, and many other small sects gathered for a few days to debate, fiery speeches, and workshops. Elbaum writes, over 2,000 people turned out, but the conference suffered from an extreme lack of focus, at some points bordering on utter disarray, and it did not meet its goal of setting up an ongoing coalition. In 1976, the United States celebrated its bicentennial with a mass patriotic parade in Philadelphia to honor the Declaration of Independence. The Revolutionary Communist Party countered the bicentennial with months of provocative actions leading up to a large rally on July 4th. The slogan they used was, "We've carried the rich for 200 years. Now let's get them off our backs." Vietnam Veterans Against the War, led by RCP members, raised the slogan, "We won't fight another rich man's war." RCP activists seized the Statue of Liberty and unfurled huge banners with both slogans from it. 5,000 people joined the RCP in the streets of Philadelphia for their July 4th event. A photograph of the rally's veterans contingent has become iconic. And these are photos from that rally. We won't fight another rich man's war, right? We've carried the rich for 200 years. Now let's get them off our backs, right? The various other organizations that had attended the National Hard Times Conference convened a much larger rally called Bicentennial Without Colonies, which focused on independence for Puerto Rico and highlighted the Black Panthers. The largest presence among the crowd came from the Puerto Rican Socialist Party, a Marxist-Leninist organization that advocated the independence of Puerto Rico and denounced U.S. imperialism. The PSP was at the height of its influence in Puerto Rico and among the North American Puerto Rican diaspora, modeling itself on the Black Panthers. Native Americans, aligned with the American Indian movement, bussed in from various reservations. The crowd was estimated by the New York Times to be about 30,000 to 40,000 strong. A large contingent of Black Panthers led the march, chanting, "Black power to Black people, Puerto Rican power to Puerto Rican people, red power to red people, pick up the gun, pick up the gun." The two rallies were both led by pro-Beijing communists, but they had distinctly opposite focuses. The RCP's "We've carried the rich for 200 years, now let's get them off our backs" rally focused on economics and class struggle and very much wanted to break out of the movement and build their own organization. The RCP went it alone, doing their own rally and using it to spread a specifically communist message. The Bicentennial Without Colonies focused on race and viewing the USA as an illegitimate settler colony. The larger rally's message was not very clear, but it was very much a movement gathering of different minority groups led by Prairie Fire and the Puerto Rican Socialist Party, but also including Trotskyites, a wide range of NCM factions, anarchists, pacifists, and the bulk of the standard left, denouncing the USA as a racist country on its 200-year anniversary. It's worth noting that both rallies happened on the same day, July 4th, 1976, in different parts of the city. One rally, Bicentennial Without Colonies, was far bigger, but the smaller rally, "We've carried the rich for 200 years, got much more attention, and years later, much more information about it can be found. The bigger rally was a collection of different leftist trends, identity politics groupings, negotiating with each other for time on a stage, highlighting their various pet issues, and fruitlessly trying to build some kind of coalition. The other rally was aimed at communicating a coherent class struggle, anti-imperialist message in a way that the U.S. public could easily understand. The RCP's rally had a disproportionately larger impact despite its smaller size and shows a much more effective approach. The organizers of Bicentennial Without Colonies were aiming to hold together a fringe, isolated movement. The RCP aspired to lead the working class to revolution. In 1977, the New York Times raised the alarm about the growing influence of the Revolutionary Communist Party among West Virginia's coal miners through its Miners' Right to Strike Committee. The organization had begun in 1974 in opposition to gas rationing imposed on West Virginia during the energy crisis. One wildcat strike organized by RCP members in 1975 had gone on for 8 weeks and involved 50,000 workers who demanded a change in union grievance procedures. RCP member and Vietnam veteran Louis Skip Delano was briefly sent to federal prison for violating court injunctions. According to heavy radicals, the judge cited Delano's political beliefs as making him a danger to the industry and to the United Mine Workers. And that's where we'll stop this book for tonight. We're on page, I think 70. We're on page, or 72 is where we'll pick up. 72 is where we'll pick up from tomorrow night. So we're just making our way through this book. The new communist movement, party building in 1970s America. So there you go. All right, folks, let's do the roll call. Names and locations, names and locations. I'll call you out as I see you. Names and locations, names and locations. From there, I will then answer your super chat questions. Names and locations. Who is with us tonight? All right, we got Jake in Portland, Oregon, John McCarthy in Chicago, Jenny in Cincinnati, Lawrence Johnson in Chicago, Ryan in Kansas City. Names and locations, names and locations. Who is with us? We got Jacob in Wisconsin. Names and locations. Who is with us? Who is with us? Names and locations. Who is with us tonight? Names and locations. Who is with us? Names and locations. We got St. David's, Bermuda, Raphael in Glasgow in the United Kingdom. Good to have you with us. We got John in Florida, Alyssa in Virginia. Names and locations. Luca in Singapore. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Good to have you with us. Good to have you with us. We got Patch in Arizona. Good to have you with us. Names and locations. Names and locations. Anybody else? Names and locations. Names and locations. Who is with us? Who is with us? Names and locations. Names and locations. Rose supporting Tulsi. That's right. We got to support Tulsi. We got to support Tulsi. This is big. It's a very big situation. Names and locations. Anybody else? Names and locations. Names and locations. Who is with us tonight? Names and locations. Names and locations. Who is with us? Who is with us? Names and locations. Who is with us? Anybody else? Names and locations. All right. All right. Anybody else? Going once. Names and locations. Yes. All right. Now I see that we got a Cash App from Brandon, and we've got a Rumble rant that has come in from Leo Messi, and we've got a Buy Me a Coffee from John. So I'm going to answer those, and I think, you know what, I was going to play some music, but I think I'm just going to answer them. We're just going to answer the questions and end it for tonight. But we'll be back tomorrow, most likely. Why not, right? So if you've got any more questions, send them now. Send them now. Questions can be sent via Rumble Rants to Caleb Maupin 22 on Cash App or Buy Me a Coffee. All right. So send your questions if you got any more questions. So let's start with John. All right. John sent a Buy Me a Coffee. He said, Kirill Dmitriev called in TASS for joint Russia-China-U.S. development projects in the Arctic. That's the point. Russia and China are not trying to push the United States off the global stage. They just want to cooperate with the United States. They just want multipolarity. The Arctic is the new frontier. It's full of natural gas and oil and minerals, and let's cooperate. Russia, China, and the USA working together on the Arctic. That would be great. It's not an issue of the United States, having to, be slaves of China and Russia. No, we can share the world. We can share the world, right? Multipolarity, right? That's what Russia and China are calling for. And Wall Street, they think in terms of a zero-sum game. It's always us versus them, and that is wrong. That is incorrect. Thank you for raising that, John. That is an important fact that you just shared, right? Thank you. Now, Brandon says, how bad will it get just before the second revolution? Well, Brandon, I want to remind you, bad times in and of themselves don't make revolutions. And that's a really common misconception. What they call, there's a name for that. Accelerationism is the idea. We'll just make it so bad that'll cause a revolution or something. Revolutions are made by three things, and none of them are bad times. Bad times can contribute to making these three things happen, but without three ingredients, you don't have a revolution. First, you need a very serious crisis in society, in which the ruling class is divided among itself, in which the crisis is among the rich, not just among the masses. That's the first thing: a serious crisis in society, divisions in the ruling class, etc. Second, you need mass rebellions among the people. The people need to be in motion. The people need to be activated. And third, you need a revolutionary organization that is capable of transforming the rebellions among the people into the seizure of power, right? And it's not a question of how bad things get. It's, do we get a serious crisis in the government, which right now we have? Do we then get mass rebellions among the people? We don't have that right now, but that will come, right? Mass rebellions are what happen as the ruling class are fighting among themselves. But then there has to be a revolutionary organization capable of capturing the energy of the people and transforming those rebellions into the seizure of power. And right now we don't have that. We don't have a revolutionary organization. So what we need to do is we need to build the Center for Political Innovation to educate people about anti-imperialism. And let's be clear that we advocate a peaceful transition to socialism. We do not want the violent overthrow. And right now, our focus is on defending the Constitution. We want to defend the Constitution from the woke left and from the neocons, et cetera. And we want to build the anti-monopoly coalition of people who want a strong American economy. And we want to put forward policy solutions to improve the United States. An economic plan to make the USA stronger and have the USA be economically remolded as part of the multipolar world and the BRICS, right? We're not advocates of violence. We want to defend the Constitution. We want to work within the U.S. legal system to build an anti-monopoly coalition. We want to put forward policy solutions to restructure the United States beyond globalism, imperialism, but instead to be cooperating with countries around the world. And we want a new economy here. We need a government of action that fights for working families. And our job is to build a movement, understanding what globalism, imperialism is, understanding what a government of action might look like, and building the connections and laying the basis for an anti-monopoly coalition. In China, they had a block of 4 great classes that were opposed to the imperialists. We must build an anti-monopoly coalition that is opposed to the imperialists, that will unleash popular power, resist globalism, imperialism, demand a government of action that fights for working families. We got to be absolutely clear about this, right? And if that's not what you want, if that doesn't sound like communism to you, I don't care. We're not doing the communism thing anymore, right? I believe in God. We believe in human growth and innovation and creativity, and globalism, imperialism. This international financial order is a threat to all of humanity, is a threat to working people. And what we need is a government of action to break the power of the big monopolies, to mobilize and fight for working families. That's what we need. And if you want to call that a lampshade or a necktie, you want to call that oranges or apples, I don't care what you call that. That's what I'm for. And the bulk of people who call themselves communists are not for that. I don't know what they're for. They're for something else. And so if that's what they're not for, that, I'm against them, right? The majority of the people that call themselves communists are working to undermine our Constitution. They think Trump is so racist. They think, oh, America is such an evil country. They want to help the globalists and imperialists abolish our Constitution. And they want to, that's not what we want to do. We're with Tulsi. We want to defend the Constitution. We want to stop the emerging low-wage police state, stop the march toward World War III. What side are you on? The people of the world, of Russia, of China, of India, of Venezuela, of Iran, the Palestinians, the African people in Burkina Faso. The people of the world are against globalism, imperialism, and the American people need to be against globalism, imperialism as well. And we need to build the anti-monopoly coalition. That's what needs to be done. And we need a government of action, kind of like they have in Burkina Faso, that fights for working families and invests in people and communities, right? A pro-humanity, pro-family, pro-community, pro-growth government that celebrates human growth and innovation and controls the economy in order to unleash human creativity. We need a government of action that will fight for working families. That is what we need, and that is what we're for. And if you call that communism, that's what they call communism in China. That works for me. Yeah, that's what they call communism in Vietnam. That works for me. In Nicaragua, they call it Christianity, socialism, and solidarity. In Venezuela, they call it Bolivarianism. In Iran, they call it not capitalism, but Islam. In Russia, they call it the new Russian patriotism and Eurasianism. In America, it's called innovationism. And we are the innovationist movement that is fighting to defeat the globalists and the imperialists. And we're the only ones. There's a lot of dingbats and goofballs that are calling themselves communists and dressing up in funny costumes and doing all kinds of crazy shit. And none of them are doing what needs to be done. We're doing it. And we ain't got time to mess around with people. If you want to, sit around and talk about, who's the greatest, who's the toughest communist, who's the most pure communist, I don't care about that anymore. I really don't. Right? We've got to stop globalism, imperialism. We got to defeat the neocons. We got to protect our Constitution. We got to stop the war makers and the neocons from leading us toward World War III. And we got to lay out a vision for a government of action that'll fight for working families. That's what I'm for. And I hope that answers your question, Brandon. That's what I'm for. I'm not for some kind of, violent revolution that makes everything worse. I'm not for that. I'm not for violence. I'm not for illegality. I am not for the destruction of this country. I am for defending our country, defending our homeland and our Constitution, and moving it towards the only future it can possibly have, which is with the new world of multipolarity and outside of imperialism. That is my answer to your question, Brandon. I hope that was helpful. All right. All right. All right. And the last question that I've got, I don't see any more that have come in. The last, I've got another one from Raphael. All right, hold on. But the next question is Leo Messi. He says, why is anti-immigrant rhetoric more common in the Eastern Bloc and France? Simple. These are nation states. These are nationalities, right? The Eastern Bloc countries were created on the basis of nationalities, right? Within the USSR, they had a house of nationalities. Lenin declared various people to be nationalities. France is a nation state. Germany is a nation state. Italy is a nation state. And nation states are nationally cohesive, the same culture, the same language going back hundreds of years. And so outsiders are going to be more viewed with suspicion in a nation state than they are in America. We're a melting pot, right? There's so many waves of immigration. We got Native Americans, we got English people, we got Spaniards, we got Mexican folks, we got Latinos, we got Italians. There's no American nationality. We are not a nationality, a nation state, right? We are a country, and you can, become a U.S. citizen. But because of that, there's going to be a lot less suspicion of outsiders, right? If the Germans have been speaking German and they do German things and they're absolutely German, and then a group of people who come in from somewhere else, it's going to be much harder for the Germans to accept them than it is for America. We've been accepting immigrants. We're a nation of immigrants in a lot of ways. That's what it really gets down to. Nation states are going to be more hostile to perceived outsiders than what America is. America is really a civilization state, kind of like China or the Soviet Union or modern Russia. Right. And that's a new form of a state. You have the nation state. We're a civilizational state. Right. There's many nationalities in Russia, many nationalities in China. There's many nationalities within America. We're civilization states rather than nation states. Right. And that's a new kind of an innovation that they talk about in Russia and China. There's brilliant political science going on in Russia and in China. There's a lot of great academic work, understanding economy, understanding the nature of civilization. I talk a lot about Alexander Dugin on these streams. I don't agree with everything he tweets, but, he does good stuff, and he's a brilliant man. I'm not ashamed to have met with him. And I very much study what the Chinese Communist Party puts out. I mean, this is Kui Shi, the academic journal of the Chinese Communist Party. President Xi Jinping's writings are behind me. They're advancing in Eurasia. We're not advancing over here. So I hope that answers your question. Now, Raphael asks, will the USA and the UK be the last countries to become workers' states, or could a revolution come sooner? I don't view things in that classical Marxist way, right? I argue that we are moving toward countries that break out of globalism, imperialism, right? And that the world is pivoting towards the new anti-imperialist economy that is rooted in the anti-colonial revolutions that came out of the 20th century. And that those anti-colonial revolutions were led by Marxists, but they followed the Leninist theory that it's not about the workers and the bosses, it's about entire nations struggling to be free from colonialism and imperialism. But the working class leads that struggle, because in order to break out of colonialism, imperialism, you have to have a planned economy. You can't have profits in command. So as a result of the anti-imperialist and anti-colonial revolutions of the 20th century, there have been a number of countries that have broken out of Western capitalism and imperialism and been able to build themselves up and develop. And those countries, because they've been able to do that, they form an alternative and a new economic model that is pro-growth, whereas the Western capitalist system is crashing due to technology, right? Capitalism cannot handle technology, right? The falling rate of profit, abundance creating poverty, all the built-in problems of the capitalist system that Marx talked about, right? Capitalists constantly advancing technology, hiring fewer and fewer workers, the rate of profit going down, the workers not being able to buy back the profits, the products they produce. All of that is leading to a crisis in the West. And ultimately, we're going to need an anti-monopoly coalition, a government here that breaks the power of the big imperialist monopolies and represents a movement of the majority of the people that would economically gain from restructuring the United States outside of globalism and imperialism. That's what we need. And it's not going to come easy. And it's going to come quite hard. But what's happening with Trump and what's happening with Tulsi Gabbard is the beginning. It's just the beginning of what is going to have to naturally develop. It is in the interest of the overwhelming majority of Americans that we break out of imperialism and we position ourselves as part of a new multipolar world. And in order to do that, there's going to have to be a broad coalition of people that can make it happen in this country. And the beginning of that coalition is emerging. And what Tulsi Gabbard is doing right now is the most important thing that is going on in this country. And we have got to support her. We've absolutely got to support her, just like we supported the Uhuru 3 when they were on trial in federal court. Tulsi Gabbard is fighting for all of us right now. She's fighting for our future and a world beyond imperialism. We've got to stand with Tulsi Gabbard. We got to support the peace talks in Alaska, support ending the Ukraine war. We've got to build a movement, right? And it might be difficult, and it might be, we might have to hold our nose and go along with people that we don't agree with, and we may get frustrated. We've got to build a movement for multipolarity. We've got to build an anti-imperialist movement among the American people, and we've got to support people like Tulsi Gabbard that are fighting the fight, the shadow war in Washington, D.C. We've got to do it. We've got to do it. Tulsi Gabbard, is the most important political official in my entire lifetime. And that's what I've got for you tonight, folks. So you know what? It's shorter than usual, but that's fine. Dare to struggle, dare to win. I'm going to put on the closing music, and we'll be back probably tomorrow night. So thanks, everybody. It's been fun, and we'll be back. We'll be back. New upsurge in the struggle against U.S. imperialism is now emerging throughout the world. Ever since World War II, U.S. imperialism and its followers have been continuously launching wars of aggression. But the people of various countries have been continuously waging revolutionary wars to defeat their aggression. And while the danger of a new world war still exists, and the people of all countries must get prepared, revolution is the main trend in the world today.